There has been a lot of misinformation about the Nintendo Switch 2 over the past months, and people have been spreading nonsense daily about that. So today, I'm here to give you everything that you need to know about the Nintendo Switch 2 so you don't have to scour the entire internet for the info that you need. I'll be covering the console, the accessories, the games, the backwards compatibility, the Switch 2 edition games, and much more. And at the end of the video, I'll share my thoughts on all the Switch 2 drama that happened over the past month, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Alright, so without wasting a single second, let's start with the console. So the console is set to release worldwide June 5th with 2 bundles. The first bundle will come with the console itself and is going to be $450 US and $630 Canadian. The second bundle will come with a digital copy of Mario Kart World, which will be $500 in the US and $700 in Canada. As far as specs goes, the Nintendo Switch 2 is expected to be 10 times more powerful than the Nintendo Switch 1, and this is related to an Nvidia statement that was released not too long ago. To put this into perspective, this is the same gap between the Nintendo Wii and the OG Switch 1, so it's a pretty substantial gap. The console will be able to do a maximum of 4K resolution and 120 frames per second. But here's the caveat with that. The Nintendo Switch 2 dock will be able to do a maximum of 4K resolution at a 60 frames per second. It will support 120 frames per second when selecting a 1080p resolution or a 2K resolution. The console in handheld mode will be able to do 100 frames per second with a 1080p resolution. The console will be slightly bigger than the OG Switch, being 7.9 inches with HDR support and a 1080p screen compared to the 720p resolution on the OG Switch. The Nintendo Switch 2 screen will not be OLED and instead it will be LCD. And people that tried the console are saying that it looks the same, if not better than the OLED screen on the Nintendo Switch. There will be 2 USB-C ports on the console, one at the top and one at the bottom. The added USB-C port will be used for accessories that we will talk later in this video. The battery life is kind of a doozy, unfortunately. The console will have approximately between 2 to 6.5 hours of battery life compared to the Nintendo Switch OLED that has between 4.5 to 9 hours of battery life. The Switch 2 will now support a new type of SD card that are called micro SD cards, which are pretty new. I don't know a ton about those, but you can expect faster load times in games with that new technology. And finally, for the console, the dock will have an additional fan to deal with the increased power of the console, though it is not confirmed that the OG Switch dock will work on the console. With that, we can expect the Joy-Con of the Switch 2 to be bigger to fit the new console size, but the AR sensor has been removed. They magnetically attach to the console and they will have a new feature called mouse mode, which will have the ability to be used as a mouse on selected titles that we will talk about later in this video. So that's pretty much it for the console itself. Now let's move on to the accessories. First off, we have the Nintendo Switch camera, which will bring you about $55 in the US and $70 in Canada. It will work in tandem with Nintendo's new game chat that allows you to call your friends in-game, chat with them, and have the ability to video chat. It will also allow you to share your own screen to someone else and see up to 4 screens with video chat. Another accessory will be the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller, which will cost you $85 in US and $110 in Canada. The new Pro controller looks pretty much like the OG controller from the Switch 1 and will have pretty much the same feature, but the only thing that differentiates the two is the Switch 2 Pro controller will have HD Rumble 2 and 2 additional mappable buttons in the back. There will be an additional Joy-Con at launch costing $95 in the US and $125 in Canada. Oof. Yikes. It is pretty much the same as the Pro controller here. The only added feature is the HD Rumble 2 and the ability to go into mouse mode, which will act like a mouse in selected titles. Now let's run through the other accessories because they're pretty much self-explanatory. We have the Joy-Con charging grip at $40 in US and $50 in Canada. We have, in my opinion, the most useless accessories in the bunch, and it is the Joy-Con strap at $14 in the US and $20 in Canada. If you're a fan of motion controls, we have the Joy-Con wheel set at $25 in the US and $30 in Canada. If you're looking to add a dock to your living area, then the Nintendo dock set will be for you at the low price of $120 in the US and $155 in Canada. Looking for some extra protection for your Switch? Well, I got the perfect item for you with the Nintendo Switch 2 carrying case and screen protector starting at $40 in the US and $50 in Canada. Looking to bring your whole Nintendo Switch 2 console when you visit your family across state? Well, the Nintendo Switch 2 all-in-one carrying case will bring you about $85 in the US and $110 in Canada. We have an additional Nintendo Switch 2 AC adapter at $35 in the US and $40 in Canada. And in my opinion, I saved the best for last, and it is the 256 gig Samsung microSD express card for only $60 in US and $85 in Canada. All right, that's pretty much it for the accessories. Now let's move on to games. So basically there are three types of games that will be playable on the Nintendo Switch 2. So we got Nintendo Switch 2 games, you know, the classic, the next generation games, what most of us are excited about. Next up, we have the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games, which are basically Switch 1 games with added content and better performance. We have backwards compatible titles, and of course, the brand new addition to the Virtual Console, which is the Gamecube Games. But first, let's start with the aesthetics of games themselves. So the Nintendo Switch 2 games will come in a different box, which has a red label on top with the Switch 2 logo, and it seems like we are getting spine art back, which is pretty exciting since I was not really fond of the plain text spine on the Nintendo Switch 1 cases. The Nintendo Switch 2 cartridges will be red, and it seems like we have an additional notch, kind of like the difference between the DS and the 3DS cartridges. Nintendo has confirmed that the Switch 2 cartridges will taste really bad, so we can expect a Bunzo short in the future testing that. And that is pretty much it for the aesthetics of games. Now let's move on to actual Switch 2 games and their launch titles. Alright, so our first game of today is the most controversial title of 2025, and it is Mario Kart World, with a small price of $80 in the US and $110 in Canada. There has been a lot of controversy around this game for its variable pricing method that Nintendo are trying. Basically, it means that Nintendo will price their games however they feel like it without really explaining why, but I won't go into too much controversy in this video. We still have a lot of things to cover. You can expect in Mario Kart World a brand new open world, 24-player races, new racing mode, rail grinding, wall grinding, and much more. Next up, we have our paid tech demo, which is the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. To be honest, this is more of a showcase of the Switch 2 than a game, and it should have been included in the console, but it is a paid add-on. There are no official prices, unfortunately, but news outlets are saying that this will be a $10 game in the US, so I'm assuming it'll be $15 in Canada. Next up, we have one of my most anticipated games this year, and it is Donkey Kong Bonanza, which will release July 17 of this year, 1 month after the Switch 2 releases. It will retail for $70 in the US and $100 in Canada. Donkey Kong Bonanza will be a new 3D collectathon with some platforming and a lot of destruction. I cannot wait for this game to release. As for third-party games, I asked my good buddy Juice Bar Gaming to help me with that, so without further ado, Juice, take it away.
Third parties are going to have a major presence at the launch for Switch 2, so we're going to go through all of it, and let's start with the digital-only games that you'll be able to purchase right from the eShop on June 5th. Fast Fusion is a high-speed racing game similar to F-Zero. It actually comes from the same creators of Fast Racing RMX on the Switch. It'll retail for $14.99 US or $21.99 Canadian. Deltarune is a quirky RPG developed by Toby Fox. You may know him as the creator of Undertale. The game is being released in chapters. Currently, chapters 1 and 2 are available, but chapters 3 and 4 are going to be available at launch for the Switch 2 with more chapters to come. You can buy this for $24.99 US or $32.99 Canadian. Split Fiction is a high-paced co-op action game developed by the same creators of It Takes Two. And while you'll see this game physically on store shelves, unfortunately, there's just a code in the box. There's no cartridge or anything, making it a digital-only game. This game will retail for $49.99 US or $64.99 Canadian. Arcade Archives are coming back with Arcade Archives 2, focused more on 3D arcade games, and their first release in this line will be Ridge Racer, coming alongside the Switch 2 on June 5th. Lastly, Fortnite will be available day 1 on the Switch 2, and this is a newer version that'll be closer to the PlayStation 5/Xbox versions. It won't be like the mobile version that you see on the regular Switch 1, and it's free to play. All right, let's move on to the third-party games that you'll be able to buy physically right off the store shelves on day one. Cyberpunk 2077, the futuristic RPG, will be available day one. And what's really impressive is the entire game, alongside its DLC, Phantom Liberty, is all on the cartridge. The entire thing is on a 64 gigabyte cartridge. It'll be $69.99 US or $99.99 Canadian. Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma is a new entry in the long-running farming RPG series Rune Factory. What's really impressive is that this cartridge will not only act as a Switch 2 game, but a Switch 1 game. Literally both versions are on the full cartridge. Really impressive technology, and it's gonna run for $69.99 American or $99.99 Canadian. Sega will be at the Switch 2 launch in full force with ports of Sonic Cross Shadow Generations and Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. These are enhanced versions of these previous released games. They'll be $49.99 US or $64.99 Canadian. Not only that, the puzzle game that they have, Puyo Puyo Tetris 2, is getting an enhanced version in Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S. It'll be $39.99 American or $59.99 Canadian. It should be noted that if you have these games on the Switch 1, like Sonic Cross Shadow Generations or Puyo Puyo Tetris 2, Sega is not offering any kind of upgrade path for these games. So if you want the upgraded version, you have to re-buy these games again, and that is a whole conversation. The 3DS classic RPG Bravely Default will be seeing a remaster at launch, and it'll run you $39.99 US or $54.99 Canadian. Some big time ports are also going to be released, like enhanced versions of the Harry Potter RPG Hogwarts Legacy. You're also going to see the spy thriller Hitman Worlds of Assassination. It'll be available for $59.99 US or $79.99 Canadian. And you'll also see the God Simulator Civilization 7 get a version for Switch 2 that will run $69.99 US or $89.99 Canadian. Capcom will also be there in full swing for the Switch 2 launch, with Street Fighter 6 getting a port. It'll be available for $59.99 US or $84.99 Canadian. Their action game Konosugami Path of the Goddess will also be available for $39.99 American or $54.99 Canadian.
All right, now let's move on to the Switch 2 edition games. Like I said previously, these are basically Nintendo Switch 1 titles that got enhanced for the Nintendo Switch 2. We are talking about better frame rate, better picture quality, and what is more important in my opinion, added content. These will get a brand new physical release, and contrary to the internet says, the cartridges will be a Nintendo Switch 2 card and not a Switch 1 card with a code to upgrade them. If you already own the Nintendo Switch 1 version of these games, you will be able to buy the upgrades on their own instead of buying the Switch 2 edition of the game. These upgrades are going to be $10 US, but we don't have an official Canadian price yet. As far as launch title goes, we got The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which will be running at 60 frames per second at a 4K resolution with HDR support. Both games will have a phone companion app called Zelda Note, which will allow you to track down Koroks and will add additional story in the forms of audio notes wherever you visit popular locations in the games. If you have a Nintendo Switch Online subscription and an OG Switch copy of those games, either digitally or physically, these Switch 2 upgrades will be free. The physical copy of Breath of the Wild will be $70 in the US and $100 in Canada. The physical copy of Tears of the Kingdom will be $80 in the US and $115 in Canada. Next up, we have Kirby and the Forgotten Land plus Starcross World, which releases the 28th of August of this year and makes the game run at 60 frames per second. It has a resolution of 4K. This release will add a brand new story mode called Starcross World. The physical copy of Kirby and the Forgotten Land plus Starcross World will run you about $80 in the US and $115 in Canada. We are getting another Switch 2 edition game, and it is Mario Party Jamboree plus Jamboree TV, releasing July 24, 2025, with the price tag of $80 in the US and $115 in Canada. There are a lot of new things this bundle offers. It will include new modes that use the brand new mouse feature of the Joy-Con, the new Nintendo Switch 2 camera, and the mic on the console itself. We can expect 20 new minigames in this bundle and much more. And the last one so far is Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which has a release date of 2025, so no official release date and no official price yet. But with the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Metroid Prime 4, you can expect a new way to play the game with mouse support and an upgraded resolution to 4K and 120 frames per second stock. All right, so that is pretty much it for the Switch 2 edition games. I'm sure we'll get more in the future, and we probably will have some older games that will have the same treatment as Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but we will have to wait and see in the future for that. All right, so next up we have the backwards compatible title, and this one is pretty simple actually. Most of the Switch 1 library will work on the Nintendo Switch 2 unless they require the AR sensor of the OG Switch Joy-Con, like WireWare Move and the Nintendo Labo, but other than those two, I don't know what wouldn't work on the console. One thing to keep in mind with backwards compatibility is the way games will work on the console is not native, and it will require a little bit of software emulation to make them work. It means that some Switch 1 titles are straight up not working on the Nintendo Switch 2. If you want to know exactly which games are not working, Nintendo has put out a list on their website, and they are actively working on the games to make them work in the near future. One thing to keep in mind with all of this is that Nintendo announced that they will have some free updates on old AAA Nintendo Switch game, which is really cool. It is not clear on what will be upgraded on those games, but I assume it will be some performance boost to be able to play them at 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second at a 4K resolution. The highlights of the list are ARMS, Super Mario Odyssey, Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, Pokemon Scarlet, Pokemon Violet, and we have more. But I'm not going to go into too much detail. You can look up the official list on Nintendo's website. So if you're seeing some physical copies of this game on the cheap, I would recommend picking those up before they get extremely expensive. And lastly, we have Gamecube Games, which is coming to the Nintendo Switch Online at launch, which is honestly very exciting. The games that are announced to come day one are The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, F-Zero GX, and Soul Calibur 2. But there are more games announced in the future, and those games are Super Mario Sunshine, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, Super Mario Strikers, Luigi's Mansion, and much more. What is really interesting about Gamecube Games on the Nintendo Switch is that they announced that they will have a better frame rate than the original games and a better resolution. Nintendo is being very vague about what resolution and what frame rate they are thinking of targeting with Gamecube Games, but I assumed that it would be a 1080p resolution at a 60 frames per second. A Nintendo GameCube controller will be available at launch for purchase through the Nintendo official website, and as always, you will need an NSO subscription to be able to purchase one. No official price has been confirmed for the NSO GameCube controller, so we will have to wait to know the price of this controller. And that's pretty much it for games themselves, honestly. That was a bigger list than I intended. Thanks to my good buddy Juice Bar Gaming. If you can, go check him out on TikTok and on YouTube. Honestly, a good friend of mine. If you have a quick second, go check him out. He's amazing. Yeah, that's pretty much it for everything right now. What do I think about the Nintendo Switch 2? To be fair, I'm pretty excited. I cannot wait for it to release. I wish we would be June 5th already, because I really want to play the Nintendo Switch 2. One thing that bothers me though is the price of the games. I'm not gonna lie, the console itself is not that expensive in my opinion. I think it's a technical marvel. It's a beautiful piece of hardware, and it's a very powerful handheld console, so I don't mind paying up for it. The only problem that I have is the game. The games are extremely expensive. We're talking about, for me, $110 in Canada for Mario Kart World, and $115 for the Switch 2 edition game of Tears of the Kingdom, which I don't have that kind of money. I'm gonna be honest here. Times are tough right now. As you can see, I'm a big physical collector. I have all my Switch games in the back. I have 2 rows full of OG Nintendo Switch games. The only thing is I'm gonna opt for the Mario Kart bundle, unfortunately. I don't have a choice. Honestly, paying $60 for Mario Kart instead of $115, like, for me is a no-brainer. I'm not a digital guy. I don't really like digital games, but I have no choice because it doesn't make sense to pay $110 for the physical copy of Mario Kart World. So unfortunately, because of that, I'm gonna go with the digital bundle. But other than that, there's not really something that bothers me like everyone else about the Switch 2. We've heard about game vouchers. Honestly, I don't have enough information to talk about game vouchers. There are so many articles online that contradicts themselves. It's not clear on what they are yet. So unfortunately, because of that, I'm not gonna really talk about them. What people think it is like PlayStation Disc, where whenever you insert a PlayStation Disc, the entire game is not on the disc itself. A part of the game is on the disc, and the other part of the game is going to be downloaded, which people are pretty angry about it. I'm not really angry about it because it's still a physical copy. Honestly, come back to this video whenever the Switch 2 is about to release to make sure you know what you want to get. I've tried to cover everything, but I'm doing this video in advance to be the first to do it. So I might miss things. I'm sorry if I do. If I've missed things, please put them down in the comments. Let me know what I've missed. Let me know what you're picking up. And if you're picking up the Switch 2 at the same time, That'd be amazing. Thanks again for my good buddy Juice Bar Gaming. Honestly, go check him out. The link of his channel is gonna be in the description below. Oh wait, forgot. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm sponsored by the subscribe button and the like button. So if you want, you can click the like button, you can click the subscribe button. But yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.